So, after the discussion on the money markets or the different instruments which are traded in the money market, we are going to discuss today about the bond market. So, already if you remember in the beginning I was discussing about the different type of instruments and the market classification on the different type of instruments on the basis of their term to maturity. Then whenever we are discussing the money market, what we have seen that those instruments which are traded in the money market, for those the maximum term to maturity is 1 year. But within that particular fixed income means the particular securities which gives a regular periodical cash flow for that particular investment. So, in that particular type of markets for fixed income securities market, we have two different segments. One segment deals with the short term securities, what we have discussed in the money market part. Today, we will be discussing something related to the other type of fixed income securities, which are relatively long term in nature. And here in this context, whenever you talk about the long term securities in India, if you talk about, we have three types of markets. We have a government securities market or what we call it the dated securities market. Mostly the maximum term to maturity of that market is up to 30 years. And we have another market called the corporate bond market. Then we have a public sector undertaking bonds, PSU bonds. So, these are the major type of instruments, major type of market which exist in India. So, before we discuss about the different market structure or the characteristics of the bond market in particular, let us discuss certain features or the technical aspects related to bond, and the technical aspects deals with related to the bond features, the general characteristics of the bond and as well as the valuation of the bond. So, then in the forthcoming classes, we will be discussing the different aspects of the valuation as well as the different type of concepts which are related to the bond. So, let us start the discussion that whenever you talk about the bond market, already I told you the bond market if you talk or the basic instrument like bond if you discuss, the typical characteristics is it gives a fixed amount of interest periodically. So, if you remember we were discussing about the typical bond whenever we talk about little bit about the valuation part, there we have every bond has a coupon. The dated securities has a coupon and the coupon is fixed, and this is the coupon or coupon rate. The coupon rate is fixed, and in every periodical basis the period may be, the frequency may be once in a year, twice in a year, thrice in a year or 4 times in a year, that is a different issue. So, every periodical basis you will be getting certain amount of coupon from this coupon payments. In that sense we call it the fixed amount of interest. And second is there is another component in the bond, that is basically in our language we call it the par value. So, what this par value means? The par value means at the time of maturity when the bond will be matured, another fixed amount the investor gets or the bond holder gets, that is basically is defined as the principal. So, whenever we talk about a bond instrument like bond, these are the two major cash flows which are available. One is your coupon which is fixed over a periodical period over the period of time, or every period you will get the fixed amount. Then we have a principal amount or the par amount which basically will be given to the bond investor at the time of maturity. So, this is the basic feature of the bond in general or the long term bond in general. So, let us see that what are those characteristics. Anybody goes to the bond market for the investment, what are those different characteristics the bond investor always face whenever they discuss about the bonds. What are those characteristics? The bond has some kind of intrinsic characteristics, number 1, and number 2 is basically what? The different type of bonds on the basis of the category, or what are the different types of bonds which are traded in the market. Then we have the indenture provisions or the legal provisions which are involved in the bond market investment. So, these are the different characteristics always we look forward whenever we talk about the investment in the bond. Remember, we are talking about a bond which is a regular plain vanilla bond. Here we are not talking about bond with certain kind of options, either it is a call option or put option. This kind of things basically we have not considered in this analysis. That we will see later, that how this particular options or features is going to affect the value of the bond. So, let us see what do you mean by this intrinsic feature. Already I told you, whenever you are defining a bond, there are certain intrinsic features are always available in the bond. One is your coupon, which basically your income which is bond investor receive over the life of the issue. Then we have the term to maturity. Whenever you talk about term to maturity, it is basically the date or the number of years before a bond matures. Then there are two types of bonds in terms of maturity we can observe in the market. One is single maturity date, one is series of the maturity date, that is called the serial obligation bond, where the bond certain amount of money you will be getting it after a certain period of time. So, if there is a 10 years bond, after 3 years one particular part will be matured, then another 3 years another part will be matured, like that. You will have the series of the maturity dates if the particular bond is a serial obligation bond. So, we have three things already I told you. We have a coupon, we have a term to maturity, then we have the principal or the par value, which we will be receiving after the bond matured. After the maturity period, the par value or the principal can be received by the investor. Then on the basis of ownership also, the bond can be categorized into two. What are those? One is called the bearer bond, another one is the registered bond. The registered bonds are basically traded in the market. The whenever the bearer bond we are talking about, there is no particular owner of this particular bond. Who is bearing the bond, who is carrying the bond, those particular investor can redeem that particular bond with the issuer. But whenever it is registered, then the bond will be issued in the name of that particular owner, and all the payments and all these things will be made by the issuer to that particular registered owner of that particular bond. And those kind of bonds are mostly traded in the bond market. So, in terms of ownership, we have two types, we have two categories, one is bearer bond, another one is the registered bond. This is the way we can define or we can explain the intrinsic features of a typical bond. Already I told you, the typical bond means I refer to the bond which is a plain bond without any kind of options. Then if you see the issues, mostly there are two types of bonds we can get. One type of bond is called the secured bond and another one basically called the unsecured bond. What do you mean by the secured bond? The secured bonds are basically what? The secured bonds are the bonds are issued against any kind of mortgage or the collaterals. So, either the bonds are issued against the any kind of legal claim or a specified property of the issuer in the case of default. For example, you have the particular issuer has issued the bond, you have invested certain money. So, there is a possibility that the bond issuer may not be able to pay the coupon or may not be pay this matured amount at the time of maturity. So, if that particular bond issuer is not able to pay the matured amount at the end of the maturity or the any kind of coupon, then there is a probability of default. In our language we call it the credit risk. So, there is some kind of credit risk involved whenever we go for the bond market investments. So, whenever the bond market investment we are facing this, to avoid or to minimize this credit risk, most of the cases the bonds are basically backed by certain kind of collateral or the mortgages. and these mortgages are used if there is any kind of default, then those mortgages can be liquidated and the money can be paid to the investor. That is why those kind of bonds are basically called the secured bond or the senior bond. And whenever we talk about the unsecured bond, the unsecured bonds are nothing but the debentures. Other name of that thing is debentures, but some of the debentures also secured, but commonly it is known as the debentures, which is issued by the long term securities which are issued by the corporates. So, whenever we talk about the unsecured bond, the unsecured bonds here, what is basically the question? Here there is no such kind of mortgage or such kind of collaterals which are backed by this particular security. So, here it is the only promise. The bond issuer has promised that he will pay the interest and the principal on the timely basis. The interest and principal both will be paid on the timely basis. There is no such kind of tangible collateral. There is no such kind of tangible collateral which is involved in this particular process, or whenever the issuance of these unsecured bonds are there in the market. So, this is the way the types of issues can be defined in the context of the bond market investments. Then we will see that what are those indenture provisions. The indenture provision is nothing but it is a contract, and there are certain provisions will be written in the contract between the investor and the issuer of the bond, or the bond holder and the bond issuer. So, indenture provision is nothing but it is the contract between the issuer and the bond holders specifying the issuer's legal requirements. So, here what is happening, whenever we are going to buy the bond from some issuer, then there is always a legal conditions, there are always a legal issues, legal aspects are involved in that, when the bond will be matured, if there is a default then what is going to happen, at what period of time the coupon will be paid. So, all kind of details will be mentioned. So, all this information what basically we are talking about, if all those information you add up, these are basically always reported in a particular contract document or a policy document. So, that is basically called it indenture provisions. So, whenever we write the indenture provisions, it is nothing but a contract between these two. Always it is not necessary that indenture provision is directly made by the investor or made by the issuer. So, on behalf of the bond holders, there is a trustee or there is an agent who works, who is responsible to basically go for drafting this indenture provisions for the bond investment, and that trustee always ensures that all the legal documents are met, including the timely payment of coupon and the principal. So, there are different clause, different kind of regulations, different kind of ifs, nots, buts and everything will be mentioned in that provision. So, in that provision is always that agreement is always made by the bond issuer and the bond holder, but on behalf of the bond holder any trustee can act, or they always make these provisions or indenture provisions with the bond issuer. So, this is basically about the indenture provisions in the context of the bond market investment. Now, let us see, you might have seen that the bond prices are quoted in the market in the various ways, but exactly how to read these quotes. Whatever way the bond price are quoted, then how the quotations can be read. You remember the bond price is always quoted as a percentage of their par value, the percentage of the par value. For example, if the bond is selling at par, it would be quoted as 100, that means 100% of the par value. If a bond's par value or the face value is let 10,000 and it is quoted 81/8, then obviously it will be selling at 10,000 multiplied by, it is 80%, 1/8 basically 1.125, then it is 80.125, this is nothing but 0.80125, then the bond will be selling at this 8012. This is 80 1/8. So, that means 80.125. So, 0.80125, then 10,000 multiplied by 0.80125, you got it 8012.5, which is basically the selling price or the actual price in the market at that particular point of time. So, this is the way the in general the bond prices are reported in the statement or in the quotations. So, when a bond price is quoted as a percentage of its par, the quote is usually expressed as in points and the fraction of a point, and each point is equal to rupees 1 or $1, whatever it may be. That means, if 97 point means that bond is selling at rupees 97 for each 100 rupees of the par. That is the way basically it is represented. 1 unit basically nothing but the 1 rupee or the $1. Depending upon the currency, this thing can be quoted or can be interpreted. Then we have the different fractions. We have, it can be reported as 1 by 2, it can be reported as 1 by 32. For example, price quote of 97 4 by 32 is nothing but 97.125 with a face value of 100 rupees. So, bonds also expressed in 64ths are sometimes denoted in the financial database or pages with a plus sign. For example, if it is written 100.2 plus, this would indicate a price of 100 2 by 64, price of 100 2 by 64. That is the way basically we interpret whenever the bonds prices are quoted in terms of the fractions. It can go up to 64s, 1 by 64s. Okay. So, this is about the use of the different fractions about the bond price quotations. So, then we have a basis point. Already we might have idea about what is the difference between the reporting in terms of the basis point and in terms of the what we can say that percentage. So, in a general sense basically already all of you might have the idea that 100 basis point is equal to 1%. 100 basis point is equal to 1%. So, if any time if even if in the policy rate also you are observing the repo rate has increased by 50 basis point, that means it is nothing but the 0.5%. So, 100 basis point is 1%. Accordingly, you can interpret 6.5% may be quoted as 6% plus 50 basis point or 650 basis point. So, increase in yield from 6.5 to 6.55 which is nothing but there is increase of the 5 basis point like that. So, if you remember 100 basis point is equal to 1%, you can interpret that particular quotations in that way. Basically, that is the interpretation of the basis point in terms of the percentage. Then we will see that how the bond prices are reported in terms of the yield. So, whenever the bond prices are reported in terms of the yield or the return, so there are two way quotations the bond investors make. One is your bid price, another one is the ask price. Bid price means whatever the buyer is willing to pay, and the ask price is whatever the dealer or the seller is willing to sell. At that particular price the seller is willing to sell, which is nothing but the ask price, and whatever price the bond holder is willing to buy, that is basically the bid price. So, the bill whenever you talk about this bid and ask, these are quite important whenever we go for the two way quotations in the market. So, the bid yield is the return expressed as a percentage of the par value that the dealer wants if this he buys the bill, and this yield is often annualized. Bill means you are referring to the bond, and the ask is nothing but the rate at which the dealer is offering to sell the bills, that means the bonds. So, here whenever if you remember whenever we are talking about the treasury bills, we were also trying to calculate the yield of the treasury bill. So, yield of the treasury bill, that formula if you remember, this is basically the treasury bill yield. The F is equal to the face value of the bond and P 0 is the purchase price, and this is basically your day count factor. This is your day count factor. If it is actual year you will consider, then it is 365, but if you are assuming roughly that every month is 30 days, then we consider 360 days in a year, because this particular reporting is always done, always basically we do or always done on the basis of the annualized return or annualized yield. So, if you want to calculate annualized yield, then this is the way basically this thing can be calculated whenever you talk about the annual discount yield for a particular bond. So, this is about the bond price quotations. So, let us discuss that how the bond prices or the bond value is calculated. Whenever you talk about the bond value calculation, already I told you the valuation of a particular asset is nothing but the present value of the future cash flows. So, already you know that what is the cash flow what you are going to get from the bond. The cash flow is basically the coupon, and end of the period we are getting a cash flow that is basically your matured amount or the face value of the bond, which is nothing but the par value of the bond. So, we have two types of cash flow, one is your coupon, and end of the period we are getting a cash flow which includes coupon and as well as the maturity value. And R is the discount rate, R is the discount rate, and already you know that the discount rate can be determined by many factors. This can be determined by interest rate in the market, this can be determined by inflation, this can be interpreted by macroeconomic condition, and this is also can be determined by the credit rating of the bond issuer. So, these are many factors which can determine this discount rate of that particular bond. The R is nothing but the required rate of return, which is a discount rate for the valuation of that bond, and once the discount rate can be calculated and coupon is known to us and as well as the maturity value is known to us, then the valuation of the bond will be possible. So, these are the three things what we need, that is your cash flow, that is your discount rate, that is your par value, then another one also we have to know, that is term to maturity. So, M is the term to maturity. So, if this data is available or these inputs are available, then the value of the bond can be easily calculated. So, this is nothing but the present value of the future cash flow. So, let us now divide these two components, one is your C by 1 plus r to the power t, one is your C by 1 plus r to the power t, which is nothing but the summation t is equal to 1 to m, because m is nothing but the term to maturity. How many cash flows you are getting over the period of time, how many times you are getting that, and how much, that is basically your C, annual coupon payments. F is nothing but the face value. F is nothing but the face value and M is basically nothing but the term to maturity. So, if you are discounting that cash flow and the F with respect to that discount rate, which is nothing but the required rate of return from the bond, then the value of the bond can be easily calculated. So, this is the two components of the valuation of the bond. So, let us see that how that particular notations or this formula is going to be changed. So, here whenever we talk about this particular thing can be now expand it, we can expand this like this is the original formula, C by 1 plus r to the power t plus f by 1 plus r to the power m. T is equal to time period at that particular point of time and m is equal to basically the maturity period. Then if you see down now C we are taking in this side, then we have 1 by 1 plus r to the power t plus f by 1 plus r to the power m. Then this part is nothing but, particularly this part is nothing but the present value of interest factor. If you go back see your present value interest factor table, then you can find out at a particular r and particular maturity period what is that PVIF. So, if you know the PVI value, then 1 by 1 plus r to the power t will automatically, because this is calculated from the expansionary formula, geometric progression formula, that we will find out that present value of this particular cash flow multiplied by the C plus the F is basically the maturity value or the face value divided by 1 plus r to the power t. So, then if you see now this is nothing but the summation t is equal to 1 to m into 1 by 1 plus r to the power t, which is nothing but the present value of interest factor at a particular maturity period with this discount rate, we can now, if you this particular thing, if you expand it, you are getting this particular thing, that is 1 by 1 plus r to the power m 1 minus divided by r. Okay. So, into C plus f by 1 plus r to the power m. So, then what we can do? We can find out the value of that particular bond. So, now let us see that if you take the example, then how it is calculated. Let there is a bond whose maturity period is 10 years, coupon payment is 9%, which is annual. Your face value of the bond or the par value of the bond is $1,000 and your R is equal to 10%. So, if the 9% is the coupon rate what you are getting against this 1000 par value, then your coupon amount per year will be 90 divided by R is equal to 10%, 1.1 to the power t plus 1000, which is the par value of the bond, divided by 1.1 to the power 10, 10 is the maturity period. Then we can find out, you can use that formula 1 minus 1 by 1 plus r to the power m divided by r into C plus f by 1 plus r to the power m. Then C is equal to $90, what you are getting on the basis of the 9% coupon. Then 1 minus 1 by 1.1, 1.1 means r is equal to 10% means 0.1 to the power 10 divided by 0.1, which is the r, plus 1000 divided by 1.1 to the power 10. Then the value of the bond at that particular point of time will be 938.55. So, if for example, the coupon is not paid annually, the coupon is paid semi-annually, then how it is going to happen, how it is going to affect the value of the bond? Then what you can do, the convention is use the 1/2 of the simple annual interest rate as a periodic interest rate to discount the cash flow. So, then if you see this example, then it will be more clear for you that for the semi-annual coupon payment, how it can be calculated. If you see now, every 6 months you are getting this coupon. So, per annual coupon was 90, annual coupon was 90. Now, your coupon is 90, then semi-annual coupon will be 90 by 2 is equal to 45. Then we have taken $45 divided by, then your annual interest rate or required rate was 10%. Now, it has become divided by 2, that has become 5%. So, then we have 45 divided by 1.5 to the power t, 1000 divided by 1.05 to the power 20. You see that 5% means it is 0.05. So, 45 divided by 1.05 to the power t plus 1000 divided by 1.05 to the power 20. Previously, it was 10. Now, the period has increased 10 into 2, that is 20. Then, if you put that formula 1 minus 1 plus r divided by 2 to the power m divided by r, then now it is divided by 2 everywhere and then become 2 m here. Then you can find out the value has become 937.69, which implies that little bit there is a deviation if the coupons are paid semi-annually. So, now if you now expand it little bit, let periods are more, then whatever period you are taking, you can multiply the n with the term to maturity, then you divide your coupon with respect to that particular frequency, at what frequency the coupons are paid, then as well as the r also will be divided into that much number to get this required rate of return in that particular point of time or period of time. So, now the formula will become C A by n divided by 1 plus R A by n to the power t plus A by 1 plus R A by n to the power n m. N m means n represents how many times the coupon is paid in a particular year. Then finally, you can use the same formula to find out the value of the bond, where m is equal to maturity, n is equal to the number of payments, coupon payments per year. So, this is the way the normal valuation of the bond is taken place. It is different from the equity in the sense, in the equity there is no maturity value, but in the bond case we have a maturity value, that is nothing but the par value. Then the periodic cash flow basically is the coupon. So, this is the way the fundamentally the valuation of the bond is done, and there are some other issues related to the valuation that we will be discussing in the next class. Please go through this particular references for this particular session. Thank you.